Hello everyone, I'm Mara Benitez, Library Assistant here at the Seguin Public Library, and today I've got a twist on our usual origami videos, and today we're going to be learning how to do some towel folding to create some cute little towel animals. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me switch over my camera so we can see what we're doing here today. So here you can see I've got our swan. So this is going to be one of the shapes that I'm going to be showing you how to make today. I've got three for you today. There's going to be an elephant, a turtle, and a swan. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this beautiful swan and we'll get started. So towel folding is very similar to origami folding with a few extra added twists, no pun intended. You are actually rolling and twisting your towel to help make it into the animal shapes. So let's get these spread out. And for our tutorial today, I'm going to be using a regular size bath towel as well as a hand towel and a washcloth. So you don't need all three of them to make all of these animals. Some of them only use two. One of them, I think only the swan uses, or no, one of them uses all three, the turtle. But so let's get started with our first one, which is going to be our elephant. I'm going to move this out of our way and spread this out. So for our elephant to get started, we're going to make his body, and we're going to do that by rolling this towel. But first we're going to section off this towel by folding in both of the long edges. And you don't want it all the way to the middle. You want there to be a little bit of a gap in between. And then what we're going to do from there is we're going to roll in the sides. We're just going to roll. And now it's tricky depending on how your towel is. If it's super fluffy and brand new like this one, it's a little bit trickier to roll without it unrolling. And you want to make sure it's nice and tight, because that tightness is what's going to hold your animal together instead of it just falling apart. So you're just going to roll and roll and roll from both sides. Don't worry if your other side starts to get away from you. You can just go back and roll them back together. And if it gets too loose, you can just unroll and re-roll again. So now we've got both sides of this, that one has the split where they're rolled and the other is flat. You want the rolled side up with the seam. And you're just going to round that over your hands, because this is going to be the four legs of your elephant. And so you can just squish these together. And it does take, like I said, if it's a fluffier towel, it takes a little bit of squishing and forming to get it to sit right. But so there we have our four legs of our elephant. And then to make his head, we're going to get our hand towel. We'll scooch this over a bit. Lay that flat. So before we were rolling the sides in either flat, straight sideways or straight lengthwise, this time we're going to go at a diagonal. So I've got kind of the center seam of my towel here. If you can't see that, I would suggest folding your towel in half and kind of creasing it there and opening and seeing where that line is, because we're going to use this point as a guideline. You're going to take this corner in at an angle. You can do that on both sides to get started, make it easy to see what we're doing here. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll this edge diagonally down so that it meets with that center seam. And you want this to be really tight as you can. Again, if it's a fluffy towel like mine, it might not look super tight, but it actually is. It's very fluffy. We'll do the same on the other side and bring it up to meet in the middle. Here you can see it's kind of bunching up where it's a little loose. So I'm just going back and tightening it again. And as you get closer to the middle, you'll notice the top start to curl up and twist. So what you want to do is just run your fingers along that and pull it up to that middle point, and that'll help straighten it out again. And you want those ends to be fairly even, because these are going to be your elephant's ears. So if one's longer than the other, like this, you can just roll it a little more to the other way until they are evened out. And just make that nice and tight. The tighter that is, what's going to happen is this is going to be the trunk of our elephant, and if it's tight, it'll stay in whatever shape we put it in. So that's why we want it super tight and super straight. Okay, so again, just like with the legs, we have that seam side and that flat side. So we want the flat side up because that's going to be our elephant's face. We want it to be smooth. We don't want a crease running over it. So our elephant side is face side is up. and we've got this flap here from when we were rolling. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold that down. And where we fold that down, that's gonna make our elephant's ears and his trunk. And so we can put that on our little elephant body that we made, and you can curl up that trunk. And if it's tight enough, it'll stay in a little bit of a curl. So you've got your cute little elephant all ready to go. And now we'll move on to our next shape, which is going to be our sea turtle. Now this one does require all 3 towels. And again, we're going to start with our big one. So I'm going to lay that flat. And this time we're going to curl in both of the long edges. Instead of folding it in half, we're going to curl it up. So I find it easiest if you start with maybe an inch or so that has been folded over flat. That kind of adds a little bit of weight to your roll as you're going. Because if you start with it just even and start curling that edge, it just tends to just fall right back. So having that little bit of added weight to that first roll helps. And we're going to roll this to the middle of this lengthwise towel. You just keep working your way side to side. These are fun to leave as a little surprise for your guests that you have staying over at your house. I know you'll see them a lot on cruise ships or fancy hotels. There are all different kinds of tutorials if you go out and look at them on YouTube. These were just 3 of my favorites. I'm going to start on the other side too, so I can make sure I get this even. Just keep rolling and rolling. With this one, it's not super crucial that it's very tight. The tightness just kind of helps keep it from being a little too floppy. So you do want it somewhat tight. Just doesn't have to be quite as tight as the elephant's trunk was. And we just roll all the way until we meet up in the middle. And then again, just like it was with the elephant, we're going to have the seam side and the flat side. So we want the seam side up, and we're going to basically wrap this around almost into a big floppy cinnamon roll with that seam going all along the outside. If it starts to fall apart, you can just stop and roll those edges back in again a little bit. Okay, so you're going to end up with a bit of it with the untucked end under the bottom where the ends are loose, and then the top just has 2 rolls going over the top. So we're going to take those rolls and we're going to part them to the sides. This is going to make your turtle's shell. You're just going to wrap them kind of around everything, and you've got a whole stack of rolls underneath there, and it might look a bit wonky, so you can just kind of adjust those rolls under there to fill out your shell and make it rounded. So there we've got our turtle shell with its round edges. We're going to make his body. So for his body, we're taking our hand towel. And with our hand towel, we're going to begin rolling in the short edges. I had to remind myself for a second which edge it was. So it's the short edges. You're going to roll into the middle. And again, you want it to be fairly tight. If it's loose, the next step is going to be tricky. So we've got our seam side, and we want our seam side to the outside. So you can see there it's parted on the creases. And we've got our 4 little cinnamon roll ends. So what we want to do is find the center of each of those and give them just a little bit of a tug. It doesn't have to come out too far, it's just enough for you to grab onto it. Just tug those out. And once you've got those, so you've got the 2 long ends, right? So you want to grab one of each in each hand. So they'll have kind of a, they'll be connected in the middle with that piece of fabric. And what you're going to do is you're going to give this a tug and just keep tugging it till it kind of makes this shape where it looks like it's got a croissant on each side almost. And this is going to be the legs of our turtle. And we can place our shell up on top of that. And if they're not sticking out far enough, you can just adjust your shell. You can re-roll it if you want to. Tug on the legs to where they stick out. And for his head, we're going to take our washcloth. And ours is already folded into a little square, but if it's not, you'll just fold it up in half and in half. And you're going to take opposite corners and curl them in. And where you curl them in, you want one side of it to be a bit tighter than the other, because the loose part that's a little more of a diamond shape, that's going to be your turtle's head. So what we'll do is we'll just tuck this under our shell to where it sticks out. And there we've got our turtle. And so now we're going to move on to our next shape. It's going to be a swan. This one's a little tricky. Took me several tries to get, so we'll see how this comes out. But we're going to get started with our big towel as usual. Let me just lay these to the side. We'll lay our towel flat. And we're going to do the exact same roll we did with the elephant's trunk, but instead we're going to do it on the big towel. So again, we've got our center seam. If yours doesn't show it quite as sharply as mine does whenever I unfolded it, you can just fold it in half, crease it really well, and open it up. And then again, I'm going to do my little guideline folds. That way you can see a little better where I'm folding to. And you can, in most tutorials you watch, you'll see them rolling tightly from the edge. I found that a bit tricky, and I found that this initial fold helped to kind of get it started. So if that helps you, go for it. Or if you're a purist and you really want to get it right the way people usually do, go for it the other way. But this is very helpful and kind of gives you a little bit of an extra start. So we're going to start rolling these edges. And just really make sure that it lines up with that crease. As you keep rolling it, since there's so much of it to roll, it's going to want to roll this way over onto this other flap, and you got to keep it from doing that. So just keep tightening it over here with these fingers as you roll. So just roll and tighten. And roll and tighten. So since it's crossing over, I'm going to stop rolling there and start on this side and make them meet up in the middle. Just keep rolling. Tightly, tightly, tightly. The tighter it is, the better your swan neck will come out, and the more formable it'll be. Just keep rolling towards the middle. Just keep going at both sides. And you'll see mine starting to do that same crinkly thing, so I'll just do the same step and tighten it and smooth it out. You just kind of work it until you've got the two tight cones and they're fairly smooth. It's okay if it's a little bit crinkled, but that crinkle will kind of make it difficult for you to shape it. So try and get it as smooth and tight as you can. And it helps too if you put one hand down on the towel and tug it back towards yourself, back and under, and roll. You just keep doing that on both sides till you've got it even in the middle. And just like with the elephant, you want these ends to be fairly even, so just keep rolling and unrolling until you've got it just about centered. Here we've got our ends of our tail and our swan's head. And just tuck it in really tight. And again, just like with our other ones, we've got a seam side where we've been rolling and a flat side. So now we want our flat side up. This is going to be our swan's back. And you can just keep tucking those rolls under just to make sure that it's all flat, because this is where we're going to make our swan's body. You can just twist those ends and lay that flat. Oh, mine just untucked. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'm gonna get my hand towel. This is gonna make our swan's back wings. So we're gonna lay our hand towel out and center this right over it. You want it to be, so you've got your crease, this is the fold that we used to make the elephant's head earlier. What we're gonna do is we're gonna flip our tail up at that crease, at that line, and set it just about, I would say about a third of the way up the towel, and fold that third up and over that body of that swan. And so we've got that solid line going across the back of that towel. We're gonna take these edges, this corner, fold it down alongside the body of the swan to make a triangle shape. And then do the same with the other side, bringing it up into that triangle shape. And I made a joke before that this actually looks like a stingray, so you kind of get a bonus animal into this video. You get 4 animals. So this is the halfway point for our swan. And so you want to make sure that's all centered and just kind of adjust it to where both ends are even. Mine's a little off center, so I'm going to scoot it over a bit. Okay, tuck those corners. And so now that that's nice and tight, we can just gently flip that tail back. You want to still hold it. This requires a little bit of multitasking to hold this all in place for this next step. But what you're going to do is you're going to take each of these wings and start to curl them under. And I find it's easiest if you take that corner and just twist it and twist it and twist it until you can hold it back here, and then tuck that end under and hold it with that hand. You'll do the same with this side. You're just going to curl it and twist it and twist it and twist it and crisscross it back here while you tuck and make sure it looks like a wing. And so now let me show you what we've got. Right now we've got our 2 tail ends from our first roll, and then these new wings that we've created and crisscrossed over. So I just hold him crisscross in place for a while we're fixing his head, just to make sure it all settles in place at the end. But if your towel is sitting fine, you can let go of it at this point. So I've got my head, so I'm going to make sure it's nice and straight at the end. What I'm going to do is lay it over the body flat, kind of adjust my towel, my tails and my wings. And you can just smoosh it a bit because it, like I said earlier, it takes a little bit for it to hold. And you're going to curl this end under. Just go over, 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 over. Fix your wings if they come untucked. Hold it there for a second. It might take a couple of times of forming it, but once it sets in place, you've got yourself a swan. And there it is, all done. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you all have a great week, and make sure to catch us next month for our next origami tutorial. Bye-bye.